and welcome to another Dead by Daylight video. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into The Shape or Michael Myers, and yeah, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so Michael Myers. For his power, it's called Evil Within, and it's got 3 separate stages that all do their own little unique. They're all like their own unique little mini kind of abilities. Where in Evil Within 1, this is the stage that he starts in. He moves at 105% movement speed, which is not that good because that's barely quicker than survivors. And he has an extremely short lunge, but he does get undetectable, which means he has no red stain, no terror radius, and his aura cannot be read by survivors. So that's sort of the power that he has in Evil Within 1. He sort of just has undetectable, so he's basically just a worse wraith in Evil Within 1. And then he can stalk survivors, which involves holding right click and staring at survivors, and that puts him into Evil Within 2, which is his second stage of his power, where he has a 16 meter terror radius, so he loses undetectable. He gets a 16 meter terror radius, which is shorter than, I'm pretty certain, every single killer in the game, without add-ons and perks to alter it. And he gets his normal lunge back, and he vaults windows slightly quicker. So, you know, he's basically just a normal killer that vaults a little bit quicker. The terror radius isn't really that big of a deal because he is tall, so you can see him over most objects. And then when you stalk more, you get to Evil Within 3, which is his final form, and that sets his terror radius to 32 meters, so, you know, the normal terror radius of most killers. But he exposes all survivors, which means they become insta-downable, so you can take them from healthy straight to the dying state, so like on the floor crawling, and can be picked up for 60 seconds. So he gets a pretty decent ability for 60 seconds, which, you know, it's not an incredibly long amount of time, but it's a decent amount of time to have such a power. And when he's in Evil Within 3, he also vaults, I think it's about 40 or 50% quicker than usual. So you can, and whenever he moves throughout the tiers, so from tier 1 to tier 2, and tier 2 to tier 3, and then when tier 3 runs out back to tier 2, because it's timed, it plays a small sound effect, which, you know, it's noticeable, but it isn't like, well, no, yeah, it is noticeable. It's pretty loud. It's map wide. It tells everyone, you know, what killer it is and what tier they're in, as long as you're paying attention. So it can be, you know, he can do really well, but he is generally considered quite weak. And then, yeah, when the 60 seconds is up from Evil Within 3, he goes back to Evil Within 2, but he keeps about a third of his power, so he only has to stalk 2/3. to go into Evil Within 3 instead of having to stalk all the way back from tier 2. So, you know, and each survivor has a pool of stalk, I guess you'd call. I don't really know what to call it, but basically when you're stalking a survivor that you've never stalked before, they will glow white, and then as you stalk them more and more, they'll become more red, and then by the time you've stalked them fully, they have no more stalk left in them for you to get. They will be like a deep crimson red. So then you can tell when a survivor's been fully stalked. You generally don't want to fully stalk the survivors, although it might make sense, you know, it does make sense to want to fully stalk the survivors, because then that means you're getting the most out of them. You usually want to stalk each survivor to about 90%, and I'll get into why in the strategies section, which I think we'll just jump right into, because I'm pretty sure I've covered all the basics of this killer. And so yeah, let's just get right into the strategies. Okay, so common strategies. To be honest, this killer, just like, you know, the rest of the killers were added early on in Dead by Daylight's life, pretty simple. There isn't a whole lot to him, and I don't play much Michael Myers. I don't tend to watch much on Michael Myers because I find him to have quite a boring experience personally, but there are people that enjoy him, and fair enough. So the only really common strategy, I guess you could say, in quotation marks, is what people will do is they will 99 their stalk, which basically means they'll take their stalk from tier 2, not usually tier 1. People usually want to get out of tier 1 as quickly as possible. But when they're in tier 2, they'll stalk people until their stalk gets to about 99%. So they'll stalk just to the margin of tier 3. And then when they actually are like on a survivor, when they can get a hit, instead of hitting, they'll stalk that survivor for like half a second and then swing at the survivor when they go into tier 3 to insta down them. So that is why, like I said on the basics, you don't want to fully stalk people, because if a survivor's fully stalked, obviously you can't stalk them, which means even if you're 99, you aren't going to be able to get that insta down. So if you leave them about 90% stalked, you'll be able to actually get them by 99 in your stalk. And it isn't like an individual kind of thing. It isn't an individual power. It isn't like you can stalk a person to a certain amount and then they get exposed. It's a global thing. So you could stalk one entire person from tier 1 to tier 3 and everyone feels the negatives of that. So that's the kind of power it is. It isn't individual, it's global. I know that some people, I'm sure that like some Myers shape players might, you know, they might 99 their stalk in tier 1, but I couldn't really think of a reason for it, because his footsteps and his breathing is quite loud when he's in tier 1, because, you know, there's no terror radius to mask it. So unless you're in not a main building, unless you're inside and it's really loud, or you've got music on in the background or something, I couldn't really imagine how you could get snuck up on by a shape, because again, you know, he doesn't go invisible. He's slow, so that gives you more time to react. it's just generally a pretty awful strategy. So they'll try to, they'll try to just get out of tier 1 as quick as possible. But because he's a killer, no, you know what? Never mind. I'll save that for the builds. Any other common strategies? None that I can think of. Again, I don't play much Michael Myers. I don't really enjoy his kind of playstyle. But I'm doing this for every killer. No, I can't think of any. If any of you guys can think of any Michael Myers, any other strategies, then put it down in the comments, because I genuinely can't think of any for the life of me. And he doesn't really have any playstyles either. Most Michael Myers players play the same, because there's sort of really only one way to play him. I don't know, some people who advocate for certain add-ons of his will say otherwise, but he's a pretty narrow killer. There isn't a whole lot you can do with him. So playstyles, there isn't really any of that. Can't play him too different to anyone else. And yeah, I think that's it. That's the strategies done with. Let's move on to the common perk builds. Okay, so back into Dead by Daylight now. We're in the perk builds section. So for this one, we just have a generic slowdown build, where we're going to be using Surge. So whenever we put a survivor into the dying state with a basic attack, which Michael Myers only uses basic attacks, so whenever a survivor goes into the dying state, any generator within 32 meters of the survivor explodes, which makes them lose 8% of their progress, and then starts to regress. So basically you've kicked it without kicking it. Overall, just a really good perk. Really solid perk. You know, it's not like top tier, but it's not awful. It's just really solid. And then you've got Deadlock, where when a generator's finished, the generator with the most progress gets blocked for 25 seconds, and then you can see its aura in white. And then Corrupt Intervention, which is good because, like I said, he has a weak early game. You know, because killers have a weak early game just generally, because that's when they've got no pressure on all of the survivors. So then this killer has an even weaker because he's just slow and he takes a while to get really started. So you've got Corrupt Intervention, which blocks which blocks 3 furthest generators for 2 minutes at the start of the trial, and then whenever you down a survivor, it'll cancel prematurely. You could also swap this out with Lethal Pursuer to show auras at the beginning of the game, but I think this would be better for Michael Myers. And then No Way Out, because Michael Myers, he does have a slow start, which means he's quite a weak killer. So if you don't really want to be banking on going into the end game, but if you sort of expect yourself to go into the end game because you're playing not that good of a killer like Michael Myers, No Way Out is really good. So whenever you hook a survivor for the first time, No Way Out gets a stack, so up to 4, and then when it's in the end game, all the generators have been completed. Whenever a survivor goes to open an exit gate, it gets blocked for 12 seconds, and then an extra 12 seconds for each token. So you'll usually have 3 or 4 tokens. At 3 tokens it's 48 seconds. At 4 it's 60 seconds. So it can really extend the game. And then for the add-ons you've got J. Myers Memorial, which it increases the rate you gain evil when you're stalking by 25%. And then you've got the Hairbow, which increases the duration of evil within by 30 seconds. But it increases the amount of evil required, so the amount of stalk required to reach evil within 3 for the first time by 50%. But that's only for the first time. So, it's a really powerful effect. You could also swap it out with Lock of Hair, but it's an extra 10 seconds for a massive extra 50% stalk required, so I think Hair Bow is generally considered the better add-on. And because you've got this add-on, you know, it sort of counteracts this a little bit. Overall, just two really good add-ons and a really good perk build. And then you have Hex Ruin, where it places this on a Hex Totem, and then any generators that aren't currently being worked on will start regressing immediately. And then when it gets broken, it ends. Doesn't work anymore. So you run Hex Undying, which makes it so, well, its first effect, which is also its secondary effect, pretty weird, is whenever survivors get within 4 meters of a dull totem, you can see that aura, and when a Hex totem gets cleansed, instead Undying gets cleansed. So basically, Ruin has 2 lives, which can keep it on, you know, it's a Hex perk. They're both Hex perks, so it's pretty unreliable. You know, Undying could extend the duration of Ruin by 30 seconds, or it could extend it for the rest of the game. You know, it's sort of, it's risky, but they're 2 decent perks when put together. And then you've got Pain Resonance, where each survivor has a personal stack, and then every time you hook a survivor on a white hook, which are 4 random ones, the generator with the most progress explodes and loses 20% of its progress, and if there's no one working on it, or you know, even if there is someone working on it actually, it'll start to regress. And then you have Surveillance, which whenever a generator is regressing, it's shown by a white aura. And then when the regression stops, it's shown by a yellow aura for 16 seconds. And noises made by generator repairs are louder for 8 seconds, which is, you know, it's a small, not 8 seconds, 8 meters I mean. It's a smaller effect, but it's not bad. Pairs well with Pain Resonance, pairs well with Ruin. And then for add-ons, you've got the Tombstone Piece, arguably Maya's best add-on. Jeez, sorry about that. Which, when he gets into tier 3, instead of insta-downing people, he can just walk up to a survivor and just straight up kill them. Just, you know, they don't need to down them, don't need to hook them, just straight up kills them. Or it takes Evil Within from you, so you don't have Evil Within 3 anymore. You have to go to it again. And then the amount of evil to go from Evil Within 3 to from Evil Within 2 is increased by 150%. So you have to get a huge amount of stock, but you get massively, you know, possibly game-changing ability. And then you have Judas Journal, where it's basically the J. Myers Memorial, but better, but it only works on the Obsession. So it does it by 40% instead of 25, but it only works on Obsession. So, you know, it's sort of like a substitute, kind of. And then you have Spies from the Shadows. This is the basic build that anyone can run, because this is just normal perks or perks that shape personal perks. You have Spies from the Shadows, where whenever you're in a 36 meter range and a crow flies off, it'll make a bubble, which basically shows you where the survivors are, and then it goes on cooldown for 5 seconds. So overall, it's actually a pretty decent perk. It's starting to come up now, but I think it's going to go back down since Distortion got nerfed, a survivor perk. But yeah, it's actually pretty decent. Then you have Sloppy Butcher, which whenever you hit someone with a basic attack, again, Michael Myers only has basic attacks, they get Hemorrhage and Mangled. Hemorrhage makes it so healing progress gets regressed when not healing, and increases the amount of blood left. So blood pool, like blood trails, happen more often. And then Mangled makes it so it takes 25% longer to actually heal, just generally. And then it also makes it so the rate at which healing progression is lost from hemorrhage is increased by 25%. And then you have Play With Your Food, where whenever you chase an obsession, whenever you chase your obsession and then you leave the chase, you get 5% speed bonus per stack, and that can go up to 3. But anytime you, even just performing a basic, so it doesn't even have to hit a survivor, if you just swing, you lose 1 stack. And then save the best for last, where whenever you hit whenever you hit anyone that isn't the obsession, you get a stack, and up to 8. And then for every stack, your basic attack cooldown. So for Michael Myers, he like looks at his knife a bit. You know, when you hit a survivor, and then you have to go into that short little cooldown, so you can't just hit them and hit them again. That is reduced by 4% per stack, up to 8. But whenever you hit the obsession, you lose 2 tokens, and if the obsession is dead, you cannot gain any more stacks. So if you were at like 3 stacks, for example, and the obsession died, you could hit as many other survivors as you want. You'll be stuck at 3 stacks. And then these 2 add-ons, they aren't necessarily good, but you know, they're the iridescent, so I thought I might as well mention them. You've got Fragrance of the Hair, which makes it so you never run out of Evil Within 3, it lasts forever. But the amount of evil required to get to Evil Within 3 is tripled, wasn't it? Yeah, it's tripled. And then you have Judith's Tombstone, which it's just a tombstone piece, but you can kill survivors, you know, kill survivors as in plural. This is only 1 per Evil Within 3. This is as many as you can get your hands on in that 1 Evil Within 3. But it increases the amount of evil required to get to Evil Within 3 by 200%, so massive amounts if you pair these together. And it decreases your movement speed by 9% while within Evil Within 3. So you basically move up 106% speed, which, you know, is basically you're basically at Evil Within 1. But all in all, it's not a bad add-on. I mean, it is, but you know, it sort of depends how you use it. You sort of have to pair them together because, you know, it's just those kind of add-ons. They don't really work that well when they're separate, but they work decent. They work all right together, and then you compare them with Play With Your Food. So then this speed is, you know, it's set down like Play With Your Food. But yeah, that's Michael Myers. And the maps you want to take yourself to is you want to take yourself to open maps, not Goldwyn though. Open maps that don't have corn, or maps with a lot of elevation, so like Coal Tower or Ironworks of Misery maybe. Maps that you can, you know, stalk from, because if you can get higher then they can't hide behind low objects. Well, yeah, that's Michael Myers, and I think that's all. So I'll see you in the next video. I hope you have a good rest of your day.